unfortunately in Madrid, in Spain, but hopefully very soon, we're gonna see Hasler speaking again to millions of people from inside Venezuela. Welcome, Hasler, and we're here to hear you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, the spark that ignited my political journey was the realization that every citizen has a voice to solving the things that we live in our countries, and that we have to have this sense of ownership. And for me, it's kind of rare because I'm a son of migrants, but I say I'm 100% Venezuelan, and I ask excuses to my parents' countries. But while my friends were asking themselves, what could I, a powerless person, do for this country? I was thinking, where and how can I contribute to rescuing democracy? A democracy that, by the way, I have never experienced myself in my country. So in a matter of 5 years, I went from discussing in high school about constitutional reform proposals to being at the forefront of in that moment, the sector with the highest credibility in Venezuela, which was the student movement. And for those years, I lent my voice, my hands, my feet, my energy, my time to millions of young people who were seeing and are seeing how their future slipped through their fingers. Millions of young people that found no future in their countries. And I remember telling them, we have to speak out about what the regime doesn't want us to speak, and we have to say that where they least want to hear it. And this took me to lots of places in Venezuela with lots of people, and we were even activating a strategic, non-violent civil resistance that allowed us, in some cases, even to achieve some goals, to tear from the regime's hand some of our demands, and to keep our universities from a biggest threat from them. Then this obviously came at a cost. Repression has been in my life since I was 17 years old, and I remember that age because that was the first time I have seen a gun pointed to my head in a couple of centimeters of distance. Then, a couple of years ago, after that, while I was president of the Student Federation, I was detained for a couple of hours in the airport, and I was accused of carrying drugs in my stomach, because that's how creative they are to creating these absurd charges to target dissent. Thanks to the pressure from the media that by chance were present in the airport, they let me go. I was able to board the plane, and I managed to arrive to Geneva precisely to go to the UN headquarters to denounce human rights violations. And I had one more violation in my list that wasn't prepared thanks to this brief detention in airport. Another years after, one day my mom was alone at home, and in that morning, they throw leaflets at our door front with a message that if I continued leading huge demonstrations in the country, they would take drastic measures. And the image in that letter was a machine gun. And I obviously decided not to stop. A couple of years after that, which was the last event, I was actually in the middle of a pandemic. And in the national broadcast channel, broadcasted in all the TV channels and all the radio stations simultaneously, I was accused with another absurd charge of being weapon supplier to a criminal gang. Again, you would agree with me, absurd charges. That meant that I had to go into hiding for 6 months, moving from one place to another, 6 infinite months, with the uncertainty of being found, of being put in prison, of being tortured, of my mom, who is a widow, I'm her only son, living alone at home, not knowing anything about me. Then, thanks God, I managed to leave the country safely, and then, thanks God also, last year, I managed to bring my mom to live with me, whom I had left alone in Caracas. So all these situations, all this cost is something I was aware of. It was a risk that all of us who face these kind of regimes are aware of, and this is a risk we have to take in our hands. And that repression, that repression, I came to my mind. I remember some friends who have been in prison that tell me that kind of their tactic not to go insane behind bars is not thinking of the day when they are going to be released. In Venezuela, political prisoners don't have a sentence. They don't know for how much time they're going to be in prison. They haven't had a trial. So there's the temptation to think, when are they going to release me? And my friends have told me, we try not to think on that. We try to live day by day, because otherwise the anxiety consumes you. And I kind of have adopted that philosophy, obviously from the exile, trying not to think when I could be able to go back. And I must confess, there are situations, there are moments when being or complying with this philosophy is hard. For example, the lead up to the July 28th election in Venezuela, where we saw a wave of hope, a wave of mobilization that we have nearly never seen in the country, that put us all in exile thinking, okay, the day to go back is near. Because the thing about it is everything about elections. I mean, what we Venezuelans have been taking out of our hands is the right to decide, to vote, not only for our representatives, but also for the path we want our country to follow. And regarding elections, I remember for years, international community said, well, while Chavez continue winning elections, we can't do anything. And then in 2015, we won the absolute majority of the parliament, and the regime took out the powers of the parliament. And then 2 years after, we won several important states in the country. Some of these candidates had the records of the results at the polling stations, and the regime refused to hand power over to them. And in this year, 3 months ago, we went again to an election because we've been a majority, a verified majority in the country, at least from almost 10 years now. Winning elections, organizing, even activities holding our own elections without public participation of officials, institutions. And now at this moment, we again were surprised with Venezuelans in the country voting over 70% for the opposition candidate, even though those 8 million of us who are abroad were kept from voting. We had people being poll observers that gathered heroically the records of the results of the elections. We showed the world we won these elections, and the regime is still claiming they won without showing any kind of evidence. And furthermore, not only showing any evidence, but also deploying a repression and terror operation all across the country that has right now over 2,000 political prisoners at this moment in jail. So what we want to ask to the world, I mean, what Venezuelans did in the country 3 months ago was a feat of huge dimensions. And now what we ask is that this power of the powerless that Venezuelans have been learning and exerting and wielding for years, and learning from one experience to another, and reaching and fulfilling this goal of winning in a huge and suppressive way, to be accompanied by the international community. Because recognizing the actual results of the elections means the freedom for political prisoners, means the opening of the economy, means the recovery of education, of health, of security. So please accompany and do everything we can do to accompany those in Venezuela fighting for democracy and not leaving them get away with this fraud. Many thanks. Thank you.